Welcome back to Behind the Bowl. My name is Brian McDonald, and I am the Director of E-commerce at Almost Pride. Today, I am joined by John Cullen. John is the founder of Bulldog Marketing. And John, thank you so much for coming on. First of all, how are you?
Great. It's a pleasure to be here. I appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. I actually just noticed too, are you located in Connecticut as well?
I am. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
in Ridgefield.
Okay, yeah, so you're not too far away. We're up in Bristol. That's where we distribute all of our food, and we make it all over in Avon. So super
Great. Nice.
close.
All right. So close. Yeah.
Yeah, super close. We'll have to have you down one of these days. Not too far of a drive.
Yeah. Or up.
Yeah. So fill me in, John. So you started Bulldog Marketing years ago, right? And kind of give everyone we're meeting in an elevator. Give everyone a quick 1 or 2 minute spiel, your experience, where you are now, and then we can kind of go from there.
Yeah. So I mean, I spent most of my career probably on your side, right? I was a brand manager. I started in coffee. I started in cheese. I actually started in pet in, I guess it was 1999 when Heinz actually had a pet business, right? I was the
Wow.
manager of Pounce cat treats in Pittsburgh. And so anyway, career evolved, all this other stuff. My last corporate job, I was the VP of marketing at JW Pet. And I started Bulldog part-time in 2009. And one of the reasons I started it was because one of the things I didn't like when I was on the manufacturer side working with agencies was that, a couple of different things. Number one, I had to pay for all the overhead. Like one of my competitors actually had an ad at Global in the show daily, and it said, "Hey, meet our team," and it was 18 people. So you start doing the math and you say, okay, 100 grand times 18, and it's a lot more than that, right? Because the founders, I'm sure, make a lot more. But if you just do the quick math, that's $1.8 million that you have to fund, as and depending on whatever you want. So what I wanted to do was start an agency where you just really paid, and I would bring in the resources that you needed, right? So if you needed packaging design, you pay for that. If you need a website, you pay for that. You need SEO, you'll pay for that. But you're not going to pay for the receptionist. You're not going to pay for a web designer if you don't need it. You're not going to pay for a graphic designer if you don't need it. So it really is me, and then I bring in resources that a particular client needs. So every client is different. Every client has a different set of requirements and objectives, right? So I have a vast network. I've been in the business for almost 25 years. We know everybody from logistics to logo design to website design to large scale promotions, right? We're big believers in like sort of promo marketing where we're trading marketing for large scale purchase orders. Right.
Sure.
I did this very successfully at JW, and the real quick story, many people have heard it, probably out in the people who know me. When I was at JW, I was the VP of marketing, and I had like I don't know, a couple $1 million budget when I first started. Right. Well, every month the budget got cut. Right. So to almost zero by the time I was there for like, I'll say over a year. Right. So I said, well, what's a VP of marketing do with the zero budget? They go on unemployment, right? So anyway, so
Yeah.
the thing was, I said, I went to John Willinger, who was the owner of the company. I said, look, we were having a lot of issues that I can speak pretty freely about it now because the company's been since sold to PetMate. This is 12 years ago. It doesn't really matter. But the point was, okay, what if we could get you $1 million PO from PetSmart that you weren't going to get? And then we used some of that margin to create a marketing program. And he was like, that's impossible. You can't do that. I've never heard of anything like that. But I came from consumer packaged goods because I was in coffee, I was in cheese. This is the kind of thing you do all the time. You
Sure.
trade marketing campaigns for POs, right? So we came up with a Jeep full of fun, right? So we were going to stuff a bunch of JW dog toys in a Jeep. And the goal was, the consumer was going to guess how many were in there. They could win the Jeep, right? So
Awesome.
we put together a sell sheet that looked like Procter and Gamble put it together, right? We didn't even call Jeep yet. We knew we can get the Jeep. We knew we could do all that, right? So we went into PetSmart. We said, look, this is what we want to do. We're going to give you a consumer a Jeep, right? We're going to do a small TV campaign and say, come to PetSmart to get, enter to win the Jeep full of fun, and you can win a Jeep, right? So we're going to do all these different things. So the buyer was like, I've never seen anything like this before. It's amazing. So, I went to the meeting because the sales guy was like, I have no idea how to sell a program like this. So I said, okay. So all of a sudden the buyer is excited. Everybody's excited. All of a sudden there's a pause. And I said, but we need $1 million PO. So she doesn't say no. She says, I'll get back to you. So 3 days later, our account person from Chuck Latham said, look, they're going to steal an end cap from Kong. and you're going to get it, and you're going to do the Jeep promotion. And it was hailed as one of the most successful promotions ever in PetSmart dog toy history, right? But
Wow.
again, but other people do this like a lot in consumer packaged goods, right? Like beer companies, all this kind of stuff. They
Sure.
do it all the time. So the quick math is okay. And by the way, it was more than a million. It ended up probably being about 1.3 million because they did a refill.
Okay.
So and it was and then the beauty was it drove so many people into the store that they went and they shopped other categories too. So it was a catalyst for the entire store. And they ended up repeating it a few times, right? And that was really that promotion that got the company sold to PetMate because all of a sudden JW was like the hottest dog toy in the country at that point, right? I mean, sales were up like 96%. It was just a crazy experience. And so the quick math is okay, you take $1 million. If your gross margins are 30-35%, you got $350,000 to play with, right?
Yep.
So a promotion like that, if you're doing TV and doing all this other stuff, it's probably somewhere 150,000. You got to pay for the Jeep, you got to pay for all this stuff. So you still have like 200,000 left over in gross margin, and you got a PO that you never would have had before, and you also walk away with a huge database of people. So anyway, so I try to implement a lot of those things with Bulldog, right? Like, PO based marketing, make your marketing really work hard for you. It's not just about pretty pictures. So some of the other things that I wanted to bring to Bulldog was a lot of agencies would say, okay, here's a beautiful campaign. Good luck.
Mm,
Let us know how it works out. They really couldn't help on the sales side.
sure.
So since I've been in the industry for so long, I have connections with all the top reps, right? Like I know Chuck Latham personally. I know, I used to know Mike Sandrome, and he's not as involved anymore. I do know people at Acosta. I do know people at All Points Marketing, some of the top rep groups in the country, right? So I usually can introduce people to those reps. So it's not just about the marketing. That's where the Bulldog marketing and sales comes in because I help people with kind of establish rep networks and try to get products sold in, right? Because if you can't get an appointment at PetSmart, I don't care how many good, pretty pictures you have of your product, it's
Yeah.
not really that helpful, right? And then the last thing I would say is one of the other things I didn't like was you sign a contract, a big contract with an agency, and the next day they hire some junior person to work on your account.
Yeah.
So I keep my hands in every account. Everybody gets my personalized service. Obviously more, than others, but I do have a hand in every client, right? Because I never like that. I never like being switched over as like a little bit of a bait and switch to a junior,
Sure.
junior account exec or whatever, right? I've been in the business for 24 years, going on 25 years. People want to talk to me, right?
Yeah.
And they want to have access to me and sort of my Rolodex, right? And my thinking and all the different things that I've done in the business. So those are some of the reasons why I started the company. It's been really interesting, and I never really looked back, right? Because I think there really was a need for this type of an organization in the pet space because there's also a lot of small players that just don't have those huge budgets, right?
Sure.
So with my model, it's a lot cheaper. Like we claim at least 50% savings over a typical agency because I just don't have the overhead.
Yeah.
I mean, again, I mean, we've built companies for other people on an outsourced basis, right? Which saved them hundreds of thousands of dollars in headcount. So we also do fractional marketing. Like, I can be a fractional CMO if I have the time. I'll dedicate 10 hours a week or, if depending on how, business is flowing.
Sure.
And that saves a ton of money too, right? Because you don't need the benefits and the 401ks and all that kind of stuff, especially in this economy right now. Where like, you can see on LinkedIn. I mean, I've never seen more open to work
I
symbols
know.
on people's things. It's been
I
terrible.
know.
I mean, so
It's
it's just
brutal.
it's sad.
It
It's sad to
is.
see that.
But
But anyway,
that's what I find really interesting though, John, is, because I have the same philosophy. I have a really hard time, dealing in the SaaS space or dealing with agencies just because of that point that you made, right? You're sold on something. And then once you're sold on it, you either have the service or the software. 4 months in, something goes wrong. 6 months in, you need to ask for help. And it's like, who's Jerry? I never met Jerry before.
right?
Why is Jerry in charge of my account? I was sold on you, right? And that's a huge issue, especially in the SaaS and agency space, that a lot of
Yeah,
people, it turns a lot of people away from. And also the aspect of you're not only helping with the marketing, but you're also helping with that sales channel, right? You're not just making their logo and then saying, hey, have a good one, take care. You offer
yeah,
so much more than that, which not a lot of, I mean, frankly, I don't know of anyone else that does it or does a great job with it. So that's what I find very interesting, because now you can take a client, right? You can take a company and they may come to you for whether it's a website redesign or increasing their, SEOs, whatever the case may be. And then next thing you know, it's like, wow, John and his company can offer this, and their sales have, 2x'd over 2 years, all because they went to you for a logo or help with their SEO. Right. And that's what I find really cool.
Exactly. Yeah, and it's just been really fun, and it's just, I got to tell you, like I must have worked with like over 100 companies in the last 15 years. I mean, it's, and again, like we say no to some people because again, like we see a lot of interesting products. Okay, I mean, I can tell you some crazy stories about some crazy products, and it's under so we do get a lot of smaller companies, right, too, that coming to us like they're inventors. They haven't really fleshed it out. We do a lot of marketing research too. We do a lot of concept testing. Again, a lot less expensive than what you could do at a normal research agency, right? Because
Sure.
I actually had a pretty strong research background too, but again, that's like a longer story for another day. But so we've seen a lot of interesting things come and go through the industry, right? And
Yeah.
we've seen the evolution of the trade shows. I'm working on some things right now where I've been interviewing some, colleagues and kind of new people that I'm meeting, and we've been talking a lot about Global Pet and Super Zoo and what does that look like? I don't know. I mean, I think the trade show experience is a lot different depending on the size company that you are
Sure.
and where you are really in your company life cycle,
Yeah.
right? So if you're Purina, it probably really doesn't matter what happens at Global Pet, right? Because it's your sales meeting, and gets that one time a year, or let's call it 2 times a year between that and Super Zoo, maybe Inter-Zoo. So call it 3 times a year where you get together with your team and you have sales meetings and all that kind of stuff. But for the mom and pop with a 10 by 10 booth who's blowing 15 grand, to come to a show, I think that experience is very different, especially if they don't really know how to handle a show like that, right?
Yeah.
So, glad hanging in the aisles is not a strategy for any of these shows, right? Because you walk away with a stack of influencer cards and no POs,
No,
right?
you're right.
So,
You're right.
yeah, so that's the attrition at these shows is pretty. I think it's a lot higher than you might think. A lot of these people come, they never come back because they blew their entire marketing budget to go to a show. They thought they were going to get the $1 million PO, right? And it
Yeah.
does happen. I mean, some people are very lucky, but in other cases, it's the story doesn't always end up that well for some of
What
these smaller.
while we're on the topic of shows, like what for someone listening that is literally like, wow, hey, I have a 10 by 10 booth. Wow, I'm going to use all my marketing budget on these next 3 shows coming up here between, PFX West, let's use for example, Super Zoo, PFX East coming up. There's a lot of shows coming up. What are like your top, suggestions or your top tips for people to get the most out of their booths at these shows?
I think it's all about the pre-work. I mean, number one, I would say if you don't have reps, you don't have a salesperson in place, you probably want to have some of that in place before the show because you want that rep or that salesperson to bring customers to your booth, regardless of the size, right? That's number one. And the other thing I would say is, snail mail is making a comeback. Sending out postcards. You can go on Vistaprint, right? We do that for a lot of clients. Get a database of who the buyers are, right? And again, your rep would come in very handy for that if you don't know who the buyers are, right? But there's software now like Apollo and stuff like that. You can find a lot of these buyers' names and their the corporate address is very easy to find, right? And even if you have to blanket every buyer in the building to try to get to the right buyer, it can be done inexpensively through postcarding, right? Because I like to do, like say 4 weeks, 8 weeks before the show, start sending and dripping out postcards. Because here's the biggest thing. And then I had a client. I don't want to disclose names and stuff like that, but we had a really big conversation about this. The first thing you have to say when you're going into one of these shows is how many buyers that can really buy my product are going to be at that show. So I had a dog food client, right? And they wanted to do all these things at Global Pet, and they said I'm not going to get into all the details, but I said, look, how many so it was dog food. Okay, how many real buyers at Global Pet do you think they're going to be there? 50, 75?
Mm,
That's generous.
yeah.
Okay, so how do you reach them? You got to get the list. You got to postcard them. You have to email them. And again, they have a really great salesperson on board, so that's really helpful. But there are ways to get to these people even if you don't have the salespeople in place, right? But you have to do the really heavy targeting, or say to yourself, does it even make sense to go to the show,
Mm,
right? Because how can I target these people for $15,000? Because I got to tell you, by the time you pay for a 10 by 10, you have two people in the booth, and you have meals, and you have the hotel. It's
hotel,
15
everything.
grand.
Yes.
Okay,
Minimum.
airfare, all this stuff that cabs, Ubers, you add it all up, it's 15 grand for two people to go to one of these shows, right?
Yeah.
So is there a better way to find these people and
Sure.
interact with these people, for 15 grand? Maybe there is, right? So, one of the things that I'm looking at doing is, and I did a little survey. I think you may have actually even you may have responded to it, but I am thinking about doing some kind of like a virtual, and not like the Global Pet did a virtual trade show during COVID. That's not going to be the model that I'm looking at, right? I'm looking at really starting it out more as like a webinar style, where like, okay, 5 vendors get a 5-minute pitch, and you try to get 100 dealers on the other end. Like start it as small and as simple as that, right? Because building door count for some of these smaller clients is like, or smaller manufacturers is really exactly what they need. Because if
Yeah.
they can build that door count, then they can turn it over to a distributor,
Sure.
right? Once
Sure.
you have some cluster, right? Like let's say in New England, you've got 50 doors. You could go to a pet food expert or somebody like that and say, hey, I've got these 50 doors. Would you service them for me, right?
Mhm.
So doing things like that, I think might be more efficient than somebody blowing 15 grand at a show and never really being able to come back because they might be bankrupt after that.
Yeah.
So I think that's the challenge. I think it's it depends on who you are and how effective these shows. Like again, Purina probably doesn't really care. It's a great way to talk to their customers. The problem I think that the challenge that we're having, I think at Global and maybe I don't know, Super Zoo seems to be emerging as a more prominent show in a way, is that a lot of the buyers aren't going, right? Like you're
Mhm.
getting like Petco and other and Pet Sense and people like that are just like skipping it because it's an East Coast show. Back in the day, and I've been in this business a long time, the show used to move around. But now it's been in Florida for the last I don't know how many years it's been, but and I think they've locked into the Orlando area for a variety of different reasons. But it used to travel. It was in San Diego one year. It was in New Orleans one year. New Orleans wasn't great. Okay, a lot of
No,
people didn't show up.
I'm not
New
a New
Orleans.
Orleans guy.
Yeah. It was crazy. It was crazy. So anyway, so this, the business is evolving a lot, right? I mean, it really is evolving, and depending again on where you are in this, like your life cycle of the company and products and distribution, the strategies are very different.
Mm,
Um, and again, I think trade shows sound amazing, but I think they're becoming less and less effective for the smaller companies.
sure. No,
So,
it makes total sense too. I mean, we just got into retail not even 2 years ago, and same thing. We were indoors in New England, and it made that transition to getting in with PFX that much easier, right?
yeah.
And now that we're in with PFX, obviously we attend the PFX shows. But before that, it didn't make sense, right? I mean, you're talking about taking, let's just say you go to 2 or 3 shows a year and you're spending 15 to 20 grand. There's 50 to $70,000 that you could be using in, whether it's, targeted ads for your company. If you're an e-commerce brand, if you're
Right.
in retail, now you can maybe hire a sales team, or you can, get indoors somewhere and utilize that money. But it is more expensive the way when you break it down like that, between the booth, the flights, the hotel, your employee costs to send people out there, all the material at your booth. Um, Before you know it, it's like, holy shit, this is a lot of money, right?
It's a
And
market.
it's
It's a real marketing budget. I mean, it's a
sure,
real marketing budget, and some people can build a business that way. But again, you got to do the planning. You've got to target. You got to make sure you're getting the people that you need there. And again, it's usually a pretty small, it's a very small list, right? Because again, dog food. If I would say if there was 50 buyers of dog food, I mean real buyers, okay, real chain buyers, right, and distributor buyers at Global Pet Expo, I think that's a lot. Okay,
mm,
it's probably not more than that,
mm,
right? I mean, Super Zoo is a different animal because you have a lot more dealers. It's a little bit more of a dealer focused show. That's different, and you can kind of write orders and stuff. So I think that's a little bit different. But Global has always, I think, been traditionally a more like a larger chain show,
sure,
right? And the orders are not typically like you're not going to write a Petco order at Global, right? Like
yeah,
it's not going to happen, right? So it's all about either. And my point is like a lot of times what you want to do is you want to have those meetings before the show and then try to close deals at the show. Not again, not you're not signing on the dotted line at the show, but you are at least you're at that level to close at that point, right?
yeah,
You're
yeah,
not opening doors there because again, I don't think those shows are great for opening. I mean, maybe. I mean, again, it's changed a lot, and I haven't been on that side. I do help a lot of my clients on that side, but again, it's a mixed bag. It depends on who you speak to, like how effective the shows are. So I think
sure,
there has to be something to fill that void. And the other thing is like to your point, once you're into a distributor, sometimes you're just better off working the distributor programs, right? Because they all have their own media kits. They all
hmm
have their own catalogs. They all have their own ISOs, that quarterly ISOs, all that kind of stuff. They have their show. And my whole thing is too is that you know you can't, this is a big problem, I think, in our industry, is like where people just think it's like very cool. It's very 1970s, right? Like, here's my cool product. You should take it because it's really neat, right?
Yeah.
When I was in consumer packaged goods, I mean, if you went into a buyer at like Publix and said, I have no marketing dollars, but my product's really cool, you should take it. The guy's going to throw you out of the office. Okay. Consumer packaged goods is just not, it's just not, the business is not conducted that way. Right. And so my point to a lot of these smaller manufacturers is like, you can't buy something that you've never heard of. So you've got to start building awareness. And I know everybody hates the trade magazines now because they've all pretty much gone online. There's not as much printed materials, but they
Mhm.
do have nice databases. They also have some nice what's the word I'm looking for? Digital assets that can be used to help get that trade awareness, right?
Mm.
And my whole thing is if you don't have a distributor yet, you better get a wholesale plugin, your Shopify wholesale plugin, and start doing it that way.
Yeah.
And shipping, caseload quantities, and starting like, okay, here's a starter kit, $99, $149, $249, whatever it is, right? And start building it that way. And then
Mm.
everything that you do is like, okay, I want to tell people who I am, and then I want to say, come get it, and here's a special deal at my wholesale website.
Yeah.
I think it's super important.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. I mean, with all these shows and with all the companies that you've worked with, obviously we're talking about, bringing the pet industry up to 2024. I've touched on this a lot on LinkedIn. I know you've brought it up, and it's an emerging industry in regards to it's finally catching up to the other industries, right? With innovations and tech and all this stuff. But out of all the shows that you've been to, out of all the companies that you've worked with and talked to, are there some like products out there or companies out there that like you're noticing or like that you're really excited to see develop? Obviously, there's been a lot of stuff over these past few years, whether it's chew toys or treats or food or accessories or clothing. But are there like a few or one company that like really stands out to you these past few years?
That's a tough one. I got to tell you, most of the stuff I see is like there's a lack of innovation, right?
Mm,
I really feel like I mean, again, it's like you see like a lot of these air dried complete foods now, right? Freeze dried. Again, I know you guys make, a certain kind of food in toppers and, all this kind of stuff, but I don't know. I mean, I think one that stands out is just like one of my clients would be Chewmate, because I think that's an interesting product where
yeah.
like, it really does do it does solve a problem, which is brushing dogs' teeth. And I've been a long time, I've had a dog since I was a kid, right? Like I never thought the whole humanization of pets was really a thing because I always felt that way,
Yeah.
right? And I had dogs since the 70s, right? And the dog was always like a member of the family, right?
Sure.
Like I mean, he was never really treated like a dog, right? And so that I always thought that was everybody was like that, right? But it really wasn't. People didn't learn like that. It kind of evolved over time, right? But it is hard to brush your dog's teeth, and I think Chewmate has a real solution to that, which is this rubber toy you can put treats inside, and it kind of brushes the dog's teeth as it plays. And I make I feel like it's almost like the next Playology, because I have done a lot of work in the dog toy area, right? And Playology is like a scent based toy, which you could argue they've done a really great marketing job. Okay, no question about it. But whether that really the functionality of the scent or whatever really matters that much, I don't know. But the Chewmate has a real benefit to it, right?
Yeah.
And there's a whole bunch of other stuff going on there, and they've got a lot of other products coming out. So I think that's pretty interesting. I'm just trying to think back to like the new product showcase. I got to be honest, I didn't see like a ton of innovation at the show. I mean, I'm just trying to think of some other things. Like there's a lot more stuff happening in like the diagnostics. Like there's a company called Coastline Global where you can kind of sample the dog, the cat's urine, and you can get
Yeah.
like a diagnostic test and all that kind of stuff. A lot
Yes.
of that stuff I think is really emerging, right? If you want to talk about real innovation, that's a real innovation, right?
Yeah, you're right.
So it's like, again, because the thing too is like vet care is becoming, more and more expensive. There's a shortage of vets. You go to the vet today, you can't get out under like $350, $400, right?
Yeah.
I mean, my dog just went for a checkup. It was like $400. I mean, she had an ear infection. I think it was like $700 by the time it was cured. So yeah. So I think, anything that's kind of doing that. I mean, Healer's Pet Care is another one that's doing a lot of interesting things in that like sort of DIY or over the counter healing solutions for pets. They've got like a booty, like a medical booty that helps heal wounds. I don't know if you've ever had a dog that had a foot problem, like a
Yeah.
paw problem. It can be
It's
really
expensive.
brutal because you start
Yeah.
putting, yeah, not only is it expensive, but then like you've got to, you put the baggie, you put the Ziploc baggie on top of the bandage, and then 2 minutes later it's all ripped through because the dog still has to go outside to go in the
Yes.
bathroom. It's like a
Yes.
nightmare. So she developed a really nice. Terry Etler is the CEO there. I've done some work with them, and she did a really nice job. And it has like a gauze insert that can go into the boot. It's
That's cool.
washable, really protects it. It's got some grips, right? So you can take the dog for a walk now. So the dog's got this problem, but now you can go out. The dog can do its business. You take it for a walk, and not you don't have this mangled up Ziploc bag or like plastic baggie from the grocery store that just does not work because I've tried it all, right?
Yeah.
And so it's great for hot spots, those kinds of things. So I think anything in the medical, anything functional, that can just make dogs' life, a dog owner's life easier and less expensive, I think is huge. There's another company called Zoop that I have to mention because these are really interesting guys, and they haven't really officially. I don't know if they've really officially launched yet, but they came from. It's a really interesting group of guys. They came from the scent business, but like hotel scents. Like when you
Okay.
come into the lobby, they're experts in that. Diffusers, all this kind of stuff. They developed it's called Zoop, ZOOP, and they've developed a really nice line of like towels, like these, they're like disposable towels. But I mean, you wipe the dog down with this towel. Like my dog, dogs love to roll in dead stuff
Yeah.
and deer poop and all this kind of stuff. They come in, they smell horrible, and you just need a quick fix before you can get them to a bath, or take them in for a bath. You just wipe them down with these towels, and I'm telling you, it just eliminates the odor immediately. It's
Interesting.
incredible. Yeah, it's incredible. And
Interesting.
what's so interesting is when people come from other categories, and then they come up with some really great stuff for pet. And these guys are really interesting, and they know the scent business really, really well. So it's just interesting.
See, that's the stuff that really like lights me up because with in pet, there's not a lot of products or businesses that solve problems. I feel like most of the pet industry is always looking for how do we either improve packaging or convenience? And no one really looks
Right.
beyond packaging and convenience. They don't really look to innovate in any way, right? It's always like whether it's an ingredient upgrade or whether it's a peelable package or a new design, that's like as innovative as 99% of pet gets.
Well, and nutrition, right? There is nutritional
Yes.
upgrades and stuff like that. But again, it's like, I don't know. I mean, I think the problem right now is I believe in all of that, but the problem right now is the economy. I mean, it's just
Yeah.
hurting people. I mean, now food has the luxury of you got to feed your dog, right? So you
Mm,
have that going for it. But the reality is, people can trade down. I don't know how many people are going to be trading up, in this economy, right? And I'll be honest, like I feed my dog Purina, what is it called?
Pro plan.
Pro Plan.
Yep.
Yeah, it's like $70 a bag. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not like I mean, I have a really great friend who's an animal nutritionist. She's like, "You're poisoning your dog," and I'm like, "Look, when I was at Heinz, we used to look at all the Purina data, right? I mean, Purina spends a lot of money on figuring out how to effectively, you know, give a dog food at a reasonable price that the dog is going to do well on, right?
Yeah.
And I got to tell
Yeah.
you, my dog does very well on it. Now, and I also know that like, food is one of those things that like it's very loyal, right?
Sure.
So I remember when I was, in another phase of my career, I interviewed at Imes, and I can't remember the guy's name, but this was before they were bought by Procter and then sold to Mars. But it was on the Imes brand. Maybe it was Yukonuba. And the guy said, like, when do people change dog food, right? The dog is pooping too much, vomiting too much, licking too much, it has like rash, maybe poor dental, problems or whatever. So it's very problem solution in terms of that. Other than that, dogs, if like the dog comes from a breeder or comes from a shelter, whatever the dog has been eating successfully is usually what the dog is on for life,
Yeah.
unless there's a problem, right?
You're right.
Or unless again, like I did a little bit of work for Wild Earth, right? Vegan dog food, and that by the way, I think is emerging. I think it's a little early, but I think
Mhm.
in the next 10, 15 years, you will see a lot of vegan diets, and again, vegan maybe is a strong word, but plant-based,
Sure.
vegetarian style diets, right? I do think a lot of things. I think the world is moving in that direction, right? With
Yeah.
the Impossible Burgers and all that, but I still think we're probably 10 years out before that becomes really, really mainstream. You can see though a lot more treats are becoming
Yeah.
plant-based,
Yeah.
which I think is that's where it will evolve on the treat side,
Yes.
right? And then I think the
100%.
category will explode, and then people will make the next natural step, and they'll say, "Yes, I can feed a plant-based diet to my pet." And there's a lot of science to back that up and all that. So I think that's kind of one of the innovations. But yeah, I think you're right. I mean, you go and you walk through the new product showcase, and you go through there, and that brings me back to one other thing to mention about the trade shows. That's probably the most important ad you can buy is in the new product showcase. I don't care if you have to have like lights flashing, I don't know, a spaceship coming down from the roof, whatever. That is a great place. You can't just throw stuff on the table there. If you're going to invest in anything, I think that's the one place all the buyers still go when they're at the show to
Yeah.
take a look,
Yeah. You're
right?
right. It's true.
Because nobody now, I think the problem that's happening is people's time is more and more limited to go to these shows. So they go and they see their big customers and, the Purinas, the Blue Buffaloes, the food guys, right? Because that's still the heart of the business, right? It's
Hmm.
food. And then they zip the new product showcase. And if they see a couple of booths they like, they write the number down and then go visit it. So I think that's why if you're going to invest anything in the show, in like that on the actual show floor, that is definitely like a number one place that I would invest in and make a little display, with lights and video and whatever you can do to grab attention at the product showcase is so important.
It's true. It's true because everyone wants the next big thing. Like Wolf has done a great job in regards to. I mean, they're in every freaking store now. It's pretty insane.
Yeah.
And they're an example of someone because these stores also, right? Like we're in the stores, they want their 50 to 60% margins on their products, but then they want
Yep.
the next cool new thing because they know in 12 months they're going to have to go to the new product showcase again because they have to bring that in again. Wolf's going to die out
Yep.
in a year or two. They need to find the next wolf to get people in their stores. And I agree. That's where people go to, store owners go to, buyers go to, because they want the next hottest new iPhone, right? They don't care
Yeah.
about the iPhone 9 and 10 anymore, you know?
And you can
Um,
walk that, very quickly. It's not like you got to walk the whole
yes.
show. Now, I think
Yes.
global has kind of contracted a little bit. I don't think the show is quite as big as it used to be, but the new product showcase is manageable, right? You can kind of zip through there, especially if you're like, okay, you're a dog buyer. You're really only going to the dog section, right? If you're a
Yeah.
small animal buyer, a cat buyer, you go into that section and you're taking a look. It has to be, right? The buyers just don't have the time. I mean, back in the day, I mean, this would be like a vacation. I mean, you'd be going on, you go to these shows forever, but less people are doing more work, right? I mean, it's just the nature of where we are today, as a working society, right? So people just don't have
Absolutely.
the kind of time anymore. So you gotta hit them where you can get them. And the new product showcase is an important place to be. I mean, not just be there though, not just throwing stuff on a table. You gotta have a real presence there.
Got to have a plan and literally look. I'm a big car guy, so I like going to the car shows.
Yeah,
And they do a fantastic job at those, like highlighting the new models. It's literally lights. I mean, I'm talking TV monitors. I'm talking videos. Get in, feel the car, like you're about
yeah,
to drive it. That's the feel that these new product showcases need to be. And I agree. I love those too. Like
yeah.
just
It's just
from my
fun.
point of
Yeah,
view.
it's
Yeah.
just fun.
But listen, John, we only have about a minute left, so I want to wrap up because we can talk forever, but I'm going to keep
Yeah,
these,
this could go on for
somewhat
three
short,
hours.
right?
Yeah, yeah, of
But seriously, thank you so much for coming on. I truly
course,
appreciate it. I know everyone is always going to learn something every time they hear you talk. So thank you. I'm hopefully someone that was listening gained something from this. That's my goal for these is just to pick up one person to pick up one thing. And next thing you know, we'll build a community, but I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. And
course.
then we'll have to get you up for a little tour of Bristol one day. You're right down the
I would
road.
love
So
that. I would
yeah,
love that.
that'd be
Thanks
great,
so much
John.
for having me, Brian. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Have a great day, huh?
All right, you too. Talk soon.
Take care. Bye.
All right, bye bye.